Kia ora koutou e te whānau. Good to be back with you. Kia ora Chewie.
Kia ora Pat.
How are you, man?
How we doing? Oh, good. Good.
I'm doing all right. I've just had the first conversation, and people are up in the whānau awful laugh when I say this in March. Had the first conversation with the whānau today about when are we going to start doing fires, because she's a chilly one today. It's a bit chilly in it today, a bit chilly. And I'll tell you the worst thing. You know the worst thing? I love nothing more. I call it the hot water blanket because I'm dyslexic and I never can remember electric blanket. So my hot water blanket is in two sides. My wife is on one, I'm on the other. And in the last 6 weeks or so, my side has decided to stop working.
Oh.
So I love nothing more in the end of the night.
Sounds like someone's sleeping on the couch.
Yeah, not me. Yeah, not me. I want the blanket. So on the lookout for a new blanket, I think. Anyway, okay, lots going on tonight. Byron Clark is in the waiting room waiting for us. Before we do anything, though, I do want to say a huge thanks to our new patrons. And Chewie, you're going to love the name of our last patron. Bevan actually signed up last Monday, but he was a bit too late to get into the shout out that night and to change the graphics. So thanks so much for joining in, Bevan. Chris Falconer, Rosie McVeigh, Rodney, and it's spelled Rodknee, just in case I know you were wondering, Rodney. Penny Larson, Saucy Susan Aotearoa, and finally, Beer Belly. Our new patron, Beer Belly, has joined us. Thanks so much for being a part of what we do. We'll talk more about that after we've had a chat with Byron. But I have what they would say in the radio world as a teaser. Chew. You ready for this? I have a package here, an unopened package.
Oh, we are now an unboxing video.
Any ideas what might be in here? We've all been waiting for them.
Underpants. C-strings.
Beanies are in there.
Beanies. Because I don't have a logo on this.
I haven't opened them yet. We'll open them in a little while. I honestly haven't looked at them. We'll open them in a little while. We'll see how they're going. And there's one other thing to talk about before we get Byron on. In the process of setting up our merch, occasionally we make mistakes. So here's an example of a mistake we've made. So these are stickers. As you can see, they've got the white outline, but they've been accidentally printed on the transfer paper we use to make T-shirts. So what we can do is we can do some little people T-shirts in BHN gear.
Oh.
Because they're smaller than they should be. And I was just thinking, if you've got a little person in your life, here's an example. And this is a bit of a release. People asked for it, Chewie, so guess what we printed out today?
Yay, Rabba Buffer bag.
But look, compared to I'm wearing the Palestinian one, see how much smaller it is? Because this is actually the size of the sticker. But that means we could put them on small tops. Now, we're not going to do this as a permanent thing, but I could probably do 10-ish little people merch gears. Got a couple of the little rainbow buffers here. Got 4 of each of our other, main ones. If that sounds a bit like you, I can't even tell you what it will cost because I don't have any little people merch. But if you have got a little person in your life and you'd like some little people merch, then why don't you email us, bighearingnews@gmail.com, and we'll just start a conversation because I'll have to obviously order stuff and get it in, and I'm not going to order 50 things to do everyone. I'm going to order the one you want, so that's why it's going to have to be a conversation.
Come on, some of you must be breeders.
I'm sure at least one of them. Statistically, one person out there. And look, these are actually so small. These ones. You could have on a 2-year-old's like baby grow. It would work. It's small enough. Just saying. Nieces or nephews, Chewie? Do you want to give any of your nieces or nephews or something a little Chewie baby grow or something? We could do it.
Oh. No, they're all too big now.
All right.
They keep growing. It's weird.
So there's a couple of little things. BigHairyNews@gmail.com if you're interested in that stuff. Have no idea what they'll cost. Have no idea how we'll get them to you, but we've got them. We think we'll do it. And also later on tonight, we'll have a look at those beanies, all of us together, because we are yet to do that. Let us welcome to the show Byron Clark to talk about a bunch of stuff. Byron, good evening and welcome.
Kia ora. Welcome
Kia
to
ora.
the
Kia
How are you,
ora.
sir? It's been a while.
Oh, well, thank you. It has been a while. Yeah.
Been a while. Anything to update us on? Probably the last time we talked to you was when you were releasing your book and doing that kind of world. How's that all gone? What's happening with you at the moment?
Yeah, the book sold really well, was a national bestseller. I've just been out for a couple of years now, but I still hear from people who have picked it up at the library and read it and send me a message or an email or something to say they enjoyed it or they talk about something they learned from it. So, yeah, I'm glad it's still reaching an audience.
Very cool. And did it go overseas? So, I think there was talk about it going overseas, even though it was a New Zealand-centric look. But the ideas are obviously transferable about these sorts of groups.
Yeah, well, a few people in Australia have bought copies, and the ebook, of course, is available everywhere. So, people who are in this kind of field, looking at the far right, looking at disinformation, a lot of them have purchased it, even if they're, in the UK or the US or elsewhere. So, always good to hear from them as well when they, talk about how it gave them some perspective on like what's happening even in this little corner of the world and what the similarities are with what's happening there. Yeah, it's great.
All right, dude. Hey, listen, we've got you on. We are talking we talked a bit last night about free speech and what's happening in America and like the right is running away from free speech at the moment because it doesn't suit their narrative. But to be fair, some on the left of recent times sort of ran away from free speech because it didn't really suit their narrative. So I think last night, I got on my pulpit for a bit and I kind of went, this is why you need to be consistent around free speech. It can't always be convenient for you. You've written a piece on Fijoa Dispatch. First of all, tell us about Fijoa Dispatch. Is this just you? Is this a group of you doing writings?
It's mostly just me, but occasionally there are guest writers, particularly at the moment. I raised a little bit of extra money, and I'm also working with the online newsletter Fight Back, and we've raised some money to pay writers in Gaza to tell their stories. So I've been publishing a lot of work from people in Gaza. Well, 2 so far, but there's going to be another 10 over the rest of this year, and possibly more after that if we perhaps do another crowdfund. But yeah, other than that, it's mostly me and the occasional guest writer. And it's somewhere where people can read my work. I can sort of write about whatever I want. Don't have to go through any editor since it's me. And people can subscribe for free, or they can become a premium subscriber, and you get a little bit of extra content for that. And you, of course, help fund me to keep doing this sort of research, this sort of writing.
Nice. And why Fijoa Dispatch? What's the name all about?
It's just a nice fruit. I had a YouTube video a few years back. I never named it. It was just me, and people would always say to me, "Oh, what's the name of your YouTube channel?" Oh, it doesn't have a name. So when I started this, I thought, "Oh, need to think of a name." Okay, there's a fruit I like. We're going to call it Fijoa Dispatch.
This is pertinent to me today. I was at the supermarket and we bought 3 Fijoas, and something about growing up in Auckland and having to fucking buy Fijoas now, because in Auckland you just get bags of the things left outside people's houses because everyone's got a Fijoa tree. So there's something still pretty foreign to me about buying Fijoas, but
Yeah, I don't think I've ever exchanged money for a Fijoa.
Yeah. All right. Hey, well, let's have a look at this conversation. You know what I did today for the first time ever? Because I'm dyslexic and sometimes the written word doesn't go in quite as much. I found on the iPhone, you can listen to articles. I can read it to you. So I had Siri read me your article a couple of times today. And I was interested because, I know what it's about, but when someone gets into it and they see themes around the Christchurch massacre or writings around the Christchurch massacre, they see writings in the same article around the Free Speech Union, writings in the same article about Destiny Church and especially the disruptions of Pride events, they may land and go, what's this actually about? So tell us about the article. Tell us about what you're writing about and the themes that are coming out in it for you.
Yeah, so it's about all those things, and really it's about how they're all connected. My writing, both the book, for those who've read it, and the stuff I do on Fijoa Dispatch, I try and avoid just hard news because I feel like you can get that from social media, and I avoid commentary. I don't think my opinions are super interesting. What I try and do is do more sort of long form essay style stuff where people will get a bit of in-depth analysis and probably learn a few new things and think a bit more deeply about some of these issues. So what I'm really trying to get across here is that 6 years on from the massacre in Christchurch, the things that led to it, which were the spread of hateful ideas, hateful ideology, is still very much happening. And so that brings in the Free Speech Union and some of the speakers they've been hosting and the work they've been doing. And it brings in Destiny Church, who have been disrupting these pride events, which is so similar to what we've seen in North America, well, particularly the US. I'm less certain about Canada, but North America over the last few years. When I wrote the book, I wrote about a couple of examples from the US, and I remember people saying, well, this is the US, it's not here. But, now it's hit here, which is why I wrote about it, because I knew we weren't far behind. Yeah.
So the themes around that, I mean, I was particularly interested, you wrote about the Free Speech Union had their event on the other side, I think, of Hadley Park, whilst there was the commemorations or a remembrance happening on the same day as the Christchurch massacre. Do you think there's anything intentional in that, or was that an unlucky coincidence that they were there?
I think it's mostly a coincidence that it was happening so close. But I'm from Christchurch. I live in Christchurch, and with this article as well, I wanted to write about my city, and there were these three things all happening on the same day. So we have Muslims going to Al Noor Masjid for Friday prayers when it's the eve of the anniversary. Not far from there, we have Free Speech Union hosting a man who's talking about race Marxism. And then in the suburbs, but again, not very far away, we have this Pride event, which is happening, which is a spiritual event remembering lost members of the community. And that's then disrupted by these young men who burst in filming, chanting homophobic slurs and so on. I thought these three things happening in my city all at the same, within a few hours of each other. That's a wee microcosm of where we are at in the world right now, isn't it? Those things all happening in one space.
Can you, is it Dr. James Lindsay or just James Lindsay? I can't remember. James
I think
Lindsay,
he is a doctor of some sort. Yeah.
James Lindsay, and you're written in your article that Salon describe him as a, quote, intellectual leader of the far right. I believe he's someone who they give credit to amplifying the claim of groomers when you talk about the LGBT
he's certainly
community.
One of the people who popularized that.
And I actually heard an article, I heard an interview with him not long ago, and there was something, he said something about he was also kind of given credit for one of the sayings against Kamala Harris that sort of stuck as well. It seems to be that's a part of his bag, that he is somewhat of a marketer of catchphrases, hateful catchphrases that the right then use against the left. Would that be a fair way of describing him?
I think that'd be a fair way of describing him, yeah. He's also trying to get the catchphrase woke right started, but doesn't seem to be having much success with that.
Yeah, I did jot that down. Explain to me, as your article says, who are the woke right?
Yeah, so it's a term that he is using to describe what we'd probably call the alt-right or the far right, or maybe there's some other terms there. So people who are very openly like white nationalists and very openly hateful, that sort of thing. And he's come to this convoluted explanation that what they're actually doing is a kind of postmodern inversion or something. And I don't know. I don't buy it myself. And yeah, while he was here in Aotearoa, when he was in Wellington at the event, the Free Speech Union hosted this sort of debate, which apparently was more of a panel discussion with a local, I'd describe him as a far right activist, William McGinty, where McGinty was arguing, don't call these people woke; they're the opposite of woke. And I think I say in my article, it's one of those moments of, the worst person you know has made a great point. Because, and he's arguing that because he is very anti-wokeness, but inclined to, I think, agree with a lot of what James Lindsay is actually calling the woke right.
Chewie, why don't you jump in? I've got some more questions, but you're smarter than me. Get in there.
What's the feeling and how was I guess, the commemoration of the massacre in Christchurch. Where's Christchurch at? I guess so long after the massacre now.
Yeah, well, every year now we have Unity Week, which is put on by a group that's made up of widows of men who were killed in the massacre. I unfortunately didn't get along to the conference that they had on the first day of that week this year. I've been in previous years, but couldn't make it this year. So that means there's always a commemoration. So pleased that that's there. But it has been 6 years and we're not getting the massive events that we got, the first anniversary, even the second anniversary. Obviously COVID disrupted that one very much. And since then, it's been a bit smaller, a bit more subdued. And that's, I guess, what's going to happen as more time passes. But I do think it's important that we, keep remembering what happened, particularly as we're still in a very similar political situation to the one we were in 2019. Not exactly the same, but many of the same issues.
Yeah, I noticed Christopher Luxon's comments were very much lip service when you look at what his government's actually doing, especially with looking at winding back some of the changes to our firearms legislation and that sort of thing. I guess, did you notice that being talked about in those sort of groups up there?
Not very much, but that's not saying it isn't happening. That's maybe just saying I haven't observed it much. But yeah, that's the point I made in my recent article, and that's been quite widely read and quite widely shared on Blue Sky in particular, probably some other social media. So I think people are thinking about that. It's very easy to speak at an event and say, that we need to deal with these kind of problems that caused the massacre. It's harder to walk the talk, and we had some things happening in the aftermath that I think were quite positive. We had the Christchurch call, we had the founding of Whenua Tarikura to research hate and extremism. We had some changes to our firearms laws, which I think on the whole are quite positive. But yeah, what we see now is the funding's all been cut for Whenua Tarikura. There's talk of rolling back those firearms legislation changes. And while the Christchurch call still exists as a non-profit group that's not affiliated with any governments, the situation in social media now is arguably a lot worse than it was at the time the Christchurch call started. I mean, we've got X, formerly Twitter, and the way that platform has really changed since Musk took over. And then we have now, after Trump's win in the US, Mark Zuckerberg talking about how Meta is going to get rid of fact checking and they're going to be more of a free speech platform as well, and talking about how they were doing this fact checking and it was censoring free speech or what have you. So many of those things that led to this tragedy are kind of either still there or back or worse. And I think we need to hold people like Luxon accountable for some of that, because he's in a position where his government could be doing more than what they're doing.
Oh, and also he's the reason that we're hearing from the other two. He's the reason that Winston and Seymour have a platform. So, I give credit where credit's due. I think it was Bomber who would say at one stage, when you open that door, Mr. Luxon, anything that breaks, you own. So he's got more than tacit connections to that. The thing about the free speech thing, it's such horseshit as well, because you have the right to say whatever you want. You have the right to say incorrect things, but I think the responsibility of a platform is to let the punter know whether that's right or wrong. So cool, say the Earth is flat. Fine, I don't care. Say it, but it's the responsibility of the platform to then go, by the way, they've got the right to say this, but this is factually incorrect. You know what I mean? It's like I heard I can't remember who it was. So in the last few days, someone was talking about the responsibility. Oh, I know who it was. It was James. Is it James O'Brien, the English talkback host? I think it's James O'Brien, isn't it? And he was giving the example of if someone comes on his radio show and defames someone, then James O'Brien ends up being in court for being the person that allowed that defamation to happen, James O'Brien and his radio station. But these online social media platforms are somehow able to go, nothing to do with us. Nothing to do with us, if all that kind of stuff goes out there. And I've never thought about it before until I heard him say that when I was listening to one of his talkback sections the other day. It's a really good point. If, for want of a better word, legacy media like tangible media that you can touch and hold and feel, newspapers and stuff, if they're all responsible for other people's opinions going out on them, maybe so should social medias be. And that might make the difference.
Yeah, I mean, these platforms are publishers, really. That's what they are. They try and argue they're just a common carrier and their users post to them. But as soon as you are making editorial decisions about what the users of these platforms see, even if you're doing that algorithmically, you're making an editorial decision. You're designing your algorithm in such a way that it's going to show particular pieces of content to a particular audience. And if you're doing that, you can then make those editorial decisions to show less of false information, less of hateful content. You could even make the editorial decision to show none at all. So every time we see this content on social media, I've spent a few minutes on Twitter not long ago and saw some terrible stuff. That is a editorial decision that Twitter has made for me to see that, because these are not accounts I was following. They were not replying to people I was following. They just ended up there anyway. Yeah.
I was also going to say about this whole kind of free speech world and conspiracy outright world. It may have been around for a while, but COVID put rocket fuel on it. Just by chance, I was watching an episode of New Amsterdam tonight. Me and my wife watching New Amsterdam. We've just started series 3, and series 3 was from 2021. And I don't know whether it was a good or a bad programming decision for him, but they went in hard, storyline being COVID. And I'm just like, I wonder if in 2021 people in America was like, hey, we've had this all last year, we just want to break from it. But the thing that, and we talked about this, the thing that struck me was at the end of the episode, it might be the first episode of series 3, 2 of the doctors are standing on the roof where they go and take their, smoke breaks, for want of a better word. And they looked at each other and they were like, oh, it's 7 o'clock. And you remember the stories about at 7 o'clock every night in New York, people would clap and cheer and beep horns and just celebrate those people who were on the front line. And I just looked at my wife and I said, can you believe it went from this, thank you for your service, for want of a better word, to Nuremberg 2.0? It went from that to, Fauci as a war criminal. And that COVID through line put rocket fuel on this stuff, man.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, the difference between 2020 and 2022, and we get the Parliament occupation, it's stark. And and that's other countries as well. I mean, the occupation here was inspired by protests in Ottawa and Canada and others in Canberra. We went from being very united as a society and thinking about, essential workers and valuing them to, this, and certainly it's still a fringe, but it became much bigger and more prominent, that conspiracy theorist movement.
Yeah, but that fringe is now, the effects of that fringe is now making decisions on the 9th floor of the Beehive. Maybe not them themselves, but the people who got them in, so they are somewhat accountable to them. So that's how it's travelled through, and it's now impacting our lives day to day here in New Zealand. I mean, Winston's just gone hardcore on all the conspiracy theories because they got him there. This new COVID inquiry, the penis police in hospitals, all these things that I know Winston doesn't give a shit about, but he knows. To get elected next time, he needs to actually give some red meat to this base that got him in this time.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen things like the repeal of the Therapeutic Products Bill, which regulated the sale of complementary and alternative medicine. We've seen the removal of relationship and sexuality education guidelines. And these were fringe policies of the kind of small parties that I write about in my book. And they have now become policy because people who perhaps previously were members of or aligned with or at least voting for those fringe parties have instead moved to New Zealand First. And talked about this in another recent interview. There was a sort of a mutually beneficial relationship between the more mainstream New Zealand First and that fringe, because after the 2020 election, New Zealand First had got 2.6% of the vote, and the fringe parties had got around 1% each. But by sort of joining together the way they did, New Zealand First could get over that 5% threshold. Winston could be back in, could be Deputy Prime Minister, and the fringe could get some of their policies implemented as part of the coalition agreement.
Chewie, got some more thoughts?
Oh, no, I'm just really enjoying where this has gone. I guess when we're talking about fringe groups in New Zealand, we have to look at the worst case scenario, which is what's happened in the US with RFK. And I note just this week that they are academics and researchers have been told, hey, look, if you're putting in funding proposals, definitely don't mention anything to do with mRNA. They will be declined straight away. And that is like the bleeding edge of vaccines for cancer. So while this administration's in, we're not going to make any progress against beating cancer. So when those sort of views become popular in the US, and we're going to have someone heading the what is it? There's the head of the FDA. Is that what RFK is?
Human Health Services, HHS, I think.
Yeah. When it's that prominent, that is going to get attention over here.
He's their Minister of Health. That's who he is. Yeah.
So I think seeing those things and how they bleed into our politics space, I think here in New Zealand we can be very, very complacent and go, yeah, but we've all got common sense and that sort of thing. There's a lot of people in the US that have common sense as well, but then this has happened, so I don't think we can be complacent about any of it.
Yeah. Byron, if people want to know more about what you're doing and where your writing is the best place for them to go is Feijoa Dispatch? Is the best place to find you?
That's probably the best place to find me. You can also follow me on Blue Sky, the handle that I've got down there, at byronclark.bsky.social.
And just to wrap up, thanks for joining us tonight. I've got two other stories we're going to do tonight. One's on Destiny Church and one news story tonight, and one's on the ceasefire being broken by Israel.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
They're both stories in your wheelhouse. Do you want to hang around for a bit and do them with us? Or do you want to do one of them?
Yeah,
or
certainly.
Do you need to go now?
Yeah, I can. No, I can hang around. Yeah.
I'm just, because both of those are completely in your wheelhouse, so I thought.
Definitely,
yeah.
Happy
All right.
to stay. Yeah.
So thanks for doing that part with us. I've subscribed to the Feijoa Dispatch, and I'm sure we'll talk again super soon about it. So thank you for that.
Right.
All right. Chewie, some super chats and stuff before we move on. Is there anything in there?
Yep. $2 to fix your blankie. There we go.
Do you know how much blankets cost these days? Oh, I don't want to say. Okay, look. Let me be honest. I'm not saying this to petition funds. Please don't do it. It won't be okay. But the electric blanket that I've had for a long time, which is a king size one, but it's also got the sheepskin around it. They're $750 new now.
Wow.
Holy shit! It's nothing like that when I bought it in 1947. But they're just I'm waiting for Briscoe's, because they're always on special. Waiting for Briscoe's to have its 80% off sale. Then I might look again.
We'll go back to the old ways where you just shoveled coals from your fire into your mattress. That'll keep you going.
Perfect.
$2 super chat, free Palestine, and Cooking Nick is late again. So there we go. That's all the super chats.
All right, and no, don't do blanket fund for Pat. I can see people writing it. That would be really weird. I'm not petitioning for that because it's not. So don't do it.
Telling our chat that don't do it.
I will refund it.
Is like
I will refund
pouring
it.
gasoline onto this discussion.
No, I'm serious. But people think, oh, you're not really meaning that. Come on, I know it. No, don't. It will be weird.
Here's some money.
Hey, let's talk about Destiny. Let's talk about Destiny, baby. Because they were in the courts today. Oh, actually, no. We have to still be accurate. People who are associated with Destiny, that was associated with. Oh, shut up, Chewie. I'm just being accurate at the moment. I have been, and this is okay. Here's the funniest thing. You know the funniest thing? These fuckers applied for name suppression, and you know what they did? Do you know where they didn't get it? They didn't get it because they themselves published their names and faces on social media and what they were doing. So they outed themselves on social media, and then they said, "Oh, we want name suppression," and the judge went, "Yeah, that's a no, little buddies. That's a no."
They openly filmed themselves storming a children's event in a library during Auckland's Pride Festival. But most of those charged over the incident will keep their names secret for now. A total of 7 people facing a range of charges made their first appearance in a West Auckland court today. It follows the Destiny Church-linked protest in Te Atatū last month. Jacob Johnson was in court.
There was a large police presence outside and inside the Waitakere District Court as 4 men and 3 women were called for their first appearances here. Most of them are facing common assault charges. However, the oldest defendant, a 67-year-old man, is facing an additional indecent assault charge. None of them entered pleas and they've all been remanded on bail. We can't yet show the faces of those arrested or name them. They were called into the courtroom one by one, and although 6 of them were declined name suppression on grounds that they subjected themselves to public scrutiny by taking part in the protest.
So obviously they've got like a stay, one of a better word, a stay of execution for 24 hours or something. But as he said, they subjected themselves. They went, hey, internet, this is me and this is what I'm doing. And now they're going, can you please keep us a secret? And I think what they're going to say in a second is also, or maybe it's on a different story. They said one of the reasons they want name suppression is because of the threats and stuff they've been getting online. Now, never ever going to tolerate threats online. Not a good thing. But I do think it's ironic that the people who try to expose the rainbow community, the LGBT community, are now worried about getting threats on themselves. Because when they expose the LGBT community, all that happens to that community is a torrent of abuse and threats online. So what they are normally the catalyst for, they are now complaining that they are the receivers of. I don't think it's okay to put threats online. I do see the irony in their complaint, though, if nothing else.
Scrutiny by taking part in the protest, and because it's been widely shared online, that decision's been appealed by their lawyer, who said they'd all received threats to their safety. The youngest defendant, a 19-year-old woman, was granted.
Like every rainbow story drag queen that you've ever put out there. Ever. Like every bar, Chewie, here in Dunedin, every woof bar that groups like yours tend to want to put out there. Yes, it shouldn't be happening, but you are doing this, causing other people to receive them. This is karma, is what this is.
I also don't believe them.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, that's possible as well. All right, this has got about 45 seconds.
Old woman was granted suppression given her age. They were arrested last week following a Destiny Church-linked protest on February 15th when around 50 people entered the Te Atatū Library, which had been hosting a drag storytime event, and refused to leave. Footage from inside the centre shows pushing, punching and shoving. So far, 8 victims have filed complaints with police.
Obviously blurred because there is still, well, there's not name suppression, but there's a challenge to it. So TVNZ's not going to show the faces to be able to identify them, even though all of this footage is still on the TVNZ website.
A large group of supporters joined the 7 defendants, though they weren't allowed inside the courtroom. There was also a small group of Rainbow community supporters standing outside during the hearing. While on bail, the 7 defendants can't go near the Te Atatu library and they aren't allowed to contact the complainants. They'll reappear in court early next month to enter pleas. Jacob Johnson, One News.
Well, there you go. Byron, you're our guest and you've written things about Destiny and those kinds of groups. So any thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat ironic, I guess, that they are trying to keep their identities secret now when, yeah, as you said, they've been sharing themselves doing this. And, yeah, they've really been trying to bring about a real backlash against these performers who are performing at libraries, and you look on social media, and that's still happening now, even as all this goes through. Well, not necessarily from the same individuals, but from people in that sphere. Yeah.
Chewie?
I think Destiny or Destiny affiliated groups, their reaction to this speaks volumes to me. If they were successful, then there would be no talk of affiliated groups. It would be Destiny, and Brian would be singing it from the rooftops. And now they've entered the fuck around and find out zone, and it's all getting a bit real. Oh, it's not Destiny. It's not Destiny. All of them go to Destiny Church, but it's not Destiny. It's just an affiliated group because they can't hide that. So now that they can't hide that, they're trying to hide the people because I bet their photos are on Destiny website, and I bet there's a smiling picture of them with Brian arm in arm. And I wonder if what's going to come out of this is if there's anything that they can hang on Brian for incitement to violence, because he's documented it as telling these people to go and do this thing. So yeah, he's not one of them, but is he going to get dragged into this as well?
New Zealand always tries and does things, and we're always kind of a bit shithouse compared to the rest of the world. So what I hear you saying is this is our January 6th, Chewie, when Trump told them to go off into the Capitol, where it's Brian telling them to go off into the Te Atatu library. Same
is
thing,
our small little embarrassing equivalent to that, yes.
The other thing, and from knowing these kinds of people and being around these kinds of groups, I know exactly what's happened. When they did it, the reason they're all over social media is this was clout in their circle. And then, of course, things happen, and people who may or may not be the orchestrator of this fade away, and all of a sudden they're left holding the bag, and they're like, hang on. We got praise for this action. How can we be in a court now? I don't want anybody to know. So I think you see a cycle of, it's the echo chamber. The echo chamber they're in are like, yeah, good on you. And then as soon as there's a crime, all that, yeah, good on you, all of a sudden they're not around us anymore, and you're just left there by yourself, and you're looking for name suppression. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. And Chewie, I think it's really interesting what you're saying as well about, will there be some kind of connection? Could it be proven that there's some kind of connection between maybe higher ups in the church authorizing, asking for, being a part of this? Or are they so devious that they know that the big fella can't get involved, not God, the other one, because if he does, then he can't have plausible deniability. So interesting to see what happens.
So much of a cult that these guys would rather jump on a grenade than drag Brian into this, because that's what it is. It's a cult.
But like you said, right, there could well be video online. Like I don't know actually, but do I remember correctly or not, Brian Tamaki talking about painting over the Rainbow Story Times as in that was a good thing? Like I'm not going to make that accusation because I can't remember clearly, but if there is footage out there of Brian talking about, them being offered, there could already be a connection there, which doesn't have to involve them actually, saying it was all about him. Maybe. I
mean, it would be certainly good if, and this is something perhaps I'd do myself if I had a bit more time, if some of our media were to look at, Brian Tamaki's sermons in the lead up to what happened. I mean, those are all online. You can find them on Destiny Church social media, and I think you'd really see there. He may not explicitly be saying, go and disrupt this event at this library, but he's going to be talking about pride events and the harm that this is supposedly doing to our society and to children, and there's a connection there, obviously, between what he says in sermons and then what Destiny affiliated groups do.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I was making a bit of a silly joke, but actually drawing the parallel on January 6th to Trump telling them to go down to the Capitol, fight for your country, that kind of stuff, those sorts of connections, and are they there in this one as well? Yeah, I think that's really interesting, Byron. That's what it'd be. If we only had some journalists left in this country, they hadn't all lost their jobs, someone could be put on that, but I don't think there's the ability to do that anymore. Anything more about Destiny, Chewie? Anything in the super chat?
Let's have a look. Oh, the super chats have definitely stacked up here. I'm going to leave a whole bunch until after we finish this discussion because they're not relevant. Jeremy Naylor, I think Destiny Church is a cult, not a church. Absolutely. Yeah. Peter here says invading a library is a perfect metaphor for the assault on wisdom by the ignorant. 100%. Children touched. Destiny Church 6. Drag queens 0. And Tiffany says we have got incitement law on the books, do we not?
The difficulty will be proving incitement. I mean, that's probably going to be quite a high bar because you have to basically be able to prove, I'm just paraphrasing now, but how someone caused or made those people go and do that action. That's the difficulty. But before we get off this,
video
Byron,
every piece of crime that you go out and do, surely that must make things easier.
Yeah. Before we get off this as well, because this is maybe more your bag, Byron, that text from Jeremy, the message from Jeremy that says they're a church and they're a cult and not a church. I mean, the word cult brings me back to your book and stuff. What do you see as the difference? What is a cult versus, say, a church or a group or whatever that may still have a charismatic leader or whatever? What are the warning signs?
Yeah, well, I attended the Decult conference here in Christchurch probably a couple of months ago now, and that was really interesting because there's a bit of an overlap between cults and what research I do. A lot of these people researching cults would use the term like high control organizations, like organizations that have a lot of high control over their members. So, in some of these smaller religious sects that we may not necessarily think of as cults, it could be, controlling the relationships that people have with anybody outside the church, controlling what media they consume, controlling diet, perhaps in some cases. I don't think that's the case in Destiny Church, but to give an example.
Hang on, but on that point, I've been to a Destiny Church. I thought if I'm taking the piss, I should probably go and check it out one day. And they made it very clear about not drinking alcohol and that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's not a bad thing, especially if you have a congregation who has difficulty with alcohol, if that was the case. But I think there probably are some dietary restrictions on there if you want to be a real Destiny Church member.
Yeah, and so I don't think I know enough about what Destiny Church is like from the inside for their congregants to really say whether I would call it a cult or not. But certainly it's worth thinking about the possibility that this is a cult-like organization in some ways.
I always think about things like isolation being quite cult-like. When I was younger, I used to do had quite a bit of fun going and visiting various cults. It was a bit of a hobby. And you'd get love bombing. All of a sudden, you'd have 9 best friends from one visit to a location. And then you'd find out that all of those people were living together because they started to then move together. And then there was control from the top. Like I've spoken to people who have been in churches where you couldn't go on a date with a person without a chaperone. The first time you're allowed to be beside beside yourself, alone together, was your wedding night. Like, so real control and real that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, the love bombing is a big one though. And then they love you so much, they love bomb you so much, you think you got all these new friends, and then of course it makes natural sense to go and move in with your friends, and then all of a sudden you realise it's been a year and a half and you haven't spoken to anyone you used to know. You've been isolated into this group and into this area. And I think lots of churches end up doing that kind of isolation. Lots of people who are in churches socialise with churchmates, but there's another leap again to then being cult-like behaviours, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else in the chat there, Chewie, or anything you want to add?
There are some more super chats, but they're not relevant to this conversation. So we'll save them.
Let's have a look at this, because this was breaking news at 6 o'clock tonight. The ceasefire being broken by Gaza. I watched the One News story and the 3 News story. I think if we're going to watch this one of them, I thought 3 News probably did a slightly better job. So let's have a look at this. And Byron, you've got people you're working with every month in Gaza, so love to get your perspective on this as well.
Fragile peace in Gaza has been shattered as Israel launches a wave of airstrikes across the Strip against Hamas targets. At least 200 people have been killed in the past few hours. That's according to Gaza's health ministry. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the fresh strikes are in response to Hamas's refusal to release further hostages, as well as what he calls a rejection of all of the proposals it received from the US. Grace Thomas has the latest and a warning. Her story contains distressing images.
So the facts we had at 6 o'clock were Israel broke the ceasefire. Israel started the war again. Israel started bombing Gaza again. And just so we're clear, 59 hostages haven't yet been released. I believe they've confirmed 24 of them are alive. I don't know about the other, whatever that makes it, 30, 35. But the response from Israel today of we want our hostages back is to kill 200 Palestinians. Minimum 200. That was at 6 o'clock. I'm sure the number's going up.
The peace was shattered in a heartbreaking moment by a sound Gazans had prayed they'd heard the last of. Suddenly, the Strip has been plunged back into the panic and loss of war.
Almost the entire family was killed, all of them in pieces, and our house collapsed on us. Our house is directly next to theirs. They are still pulling people from under the rubble.
Gaza's health ministry says the strikes have killed at least 200 people. It's the largest attack on the Strip since the ceasefire began 2 months ago. Talks to extend the peace into a second phase and end the war for good have failed, and the consequences have been instant and deadly. There are still 59 Israeli hostages in Gaza, and at least 24 of them are alive. Israelis have been begging for them to be returned. But Hamas has...
I thought this was a really ironic scene, guys. So, people of Israel are safe enough to hold this kind of, this kind of evening. The citizens of Israel are able to go out and do this as they protest against what Hamas is doing. The citizens of Gaza are having buildings falling on top of them, probably at the moment, certainly, as the report said, at 6 o'clock. And I just think that paints a picture, and this is not even the debate around Hamas and the 59 hostages. It's about, we're looking at citizens in Israel gathering together outside for this event, safe, available to do this, able to do this, and we're looking at the civilians, the citizens of Gaza, in hospitals, and as that previous gentleman said, as horrific as it sounds, neighbours being separated, their bodies literally being separated. I just think this speaks to the conflict in and of itself about, how it's not a war, it's a sustained bombardment and eradication of a people. Because if it was a war, like in World War II, you didn't have the Germans outside doing this in the middle of the night with all these lights on and the British civilians hidden away. Everyone was hidden away. It was a war. This is not that. These pictures show this is not that at all. You guys want to add anything before I hit play?
No, roll on, Pat.
24 of them are alive. Israelis have been begging for them to be returned. But Hamas has been demanding the withdrawal of Israeli troops.
Every hostage must come home.
The negotiation stalemate has seen the ceasefire grow increasingly fragile over the past 2 weeks, with Israel trying to pressure Hamas by cutting off humanitarian aid.
Sorry, I just dropped one time. Sorry, I was clear my throat. War crime. Just put that on the record, just quietly.
Hunger and desperation has been rising by the hour. Today, the frightened cries returned too. Israeli officials warning the strikes will last as long as necessary and the operation will expand.
We will show no mercy on our enemies. Let me be very clear. Israel will not stop until all of our hostages are back home. We will make it very clear to the Security Council that if they want to stop the war in Gaza, they have to ensure that the hostages are coming back to Israel. We are committed to bring them back.
The attack has not gone unanswered. Hamas has accused Israel of unilaterally ending the ceasefire and has said the move will expose Israeli hostages to an unknown fate. The UN Security Council will meet to discuss the unfolding horrors tomorrow, but already the White House has confirmed it was consulted by Israel ahead of the attacks.
All those who seek to terrorize not just Israel but also the United States of America will see a price to pay.
But these are the faces of those paying tonight.
So the other thing, just before I move out of the way and leave it to you guys, is another example of the disparity in this conflict is Israel flattened buildings. As the reporter reports, it does not go unanswered. Hamas have said some words. So the response, and I thought it was a bit piss poor way of kind of almost the journalist going, it's 50-50. Israel squished some buildings. Hamas said you broke a ceasefire. You know, I just this is horrific. You guys go for it, either one of you.
The media really struggle to cover this because the language that they've got is only of war, of conflict, when it's not a war. As you said, Pat, and as I've said multiple times, it's a war is when you have two armies fighting. This is Israel creating its own fucking free fire zone where millions of children, family, men, women, and children are sheltering in the wreckage of their homes or in tents and refugee camps. They call this breaking the ceasefire because they're dropping bombs here, but offensive actions against Gazans did not stop.
Yeah,
they cut power, they cut water, they have a stranglehold on food deliveries. They're quite happy for civilians to raid resupply trucks on the border while soldiers watch on. It is like saying, hey, look, I'm not strangling someone to death. I let them breathe every couple of minutes. And then there has been zero coverage of while the ceasefire was going on in the West Bank, the IDF has been on offensive operations as well. They have killed civilians, they have shot at cars, they have bulldozed houses and evicted people and bulldozed olive plantations and that. There has been no pause on the ethnic cleansing and genocide of Palestinians in and around Israel at all. But the language of this is the ceasefire has been broken. Now, I think people that watch this show often know that I follow military stuff quite closely. Some of the disconnect is jarring. Okay, this is one that I saw from a website that I follow called The War Zone. Israeli F-35s first to use beast mode in combat. Great headline. One of the world's most technologically advanced stealth fighters, and this article is crowing about the fact that the Israelis have fully loaded it up full of bombs for the first time ever and used it in combat as if somebody is fighting against them. This is a stealth aircraft that they feel doesn't need to be stealthy anymore as long as they can hang more bombs on it to drop them on refugee camps and children.
So can I just clarify? Can I clarify something there? And because I can't read it from here, that's saying they're first to use beast mode against Gaza or against the West Bank, or just in general. They're not saying where they're using it.
It doesn't say specifically where it is, but there's only one place that the IDF is dropping bombs at the moment, and that is Gaza. I don't believe that they're still bombing to the north. In the Golan Heights and all of that area, it is all Gaza.
Okay.
So yeah, they're so confident in this that they'll test untested weapon systems over Gaza because they have a full read on everything. They can monitor this, and they know that there is zero threat for aircraft over Gaza. It's not like they've got an anti-aircraft system. It's not like they've got any answer to Israeli tanks. Like this is just a beatdown, and they want to be all tough, and they say we will not stop until we get our hostages back. Dude, we know that you're on a murderous, unstoppable rampage because the world does not know how to talk to you about this, and the US especially doesn't give a single fuck anymore because you're going to be, at this rate, the only customer for the F-35. So
Byron,
it's all pretty jarring.
Yeah, Byron, you've obviously got connections in there at the moment with writings and stuff. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, well, one thing that comes to mind just looking at that article there, I'd encourage people to read Anthony Lowenstein's recent book, The Palestine Laboratory. He talks about how so many of these new weapons are tested on Palestinians, and then they can be marketed as battlefield tested and so on. So quite often this sort of thing is happening. This is, American weapons, and also Israel themselves develop a lot of weapons and then can sell them to the world, saying, yes, we've tested these. They've tested them on Palestinians. It was, really quite devastating to see the ceasefire broken like this, and 200 dead is a lot. Just this morning, New Zealand time, I was playing chess online with a man in Khan Yunis, and then I went to work. He probably went to sleep. After the news, I've been watching the news. I saw bombing of Khan Yunis. Are you safe? I haven't heard from him since, so who knows what that means.
How do you respond to that? I don't know. What's the solution here, Byron? What's the final outcome? What happens from here, in your thoughts?
It's hard. It's hard to know, and we can speculate on what should happen, and what should happen and what would happen could be very different things. I think our country should be taking in more refugees from Palestine. That can sometimes be a controversial position to take because people point out that it's unlikely that when people leave that Israel will allow them to return. That's true, but at the same time, there are many people who want to get out of the war zone, and point out there's no right of return for dead either. They never return. So I think one thing people here could do would be lobbying our government to take more refugees. Also, to put diplomatic and economic sanctions on Israel. Support the boycott, divest and sanctions movement. Boycott companies that are profiting from what's going on. And I think if people can, even just raise more awareness of what's happening there, the media coverage is not fantastic. They avoid words like genocide, ethnic cleansing. They, as we were discussing before, talk about this as a war when it's not really a war. One of the things that I've been doing with the articles that are being published on Fajara Dispatch and by Fightback is just allowing people in Gaza to tell their stories. And most of these people are, not necessarily political activists. They're people who had, hopes and dreams and are finding now those have been shattered. They've had university study disrupted, businesses disrupted, family members die, homes lost. And one of the reasons I want to do that kind of reporting rather than just, reporting on the geopolitics of it all is just a reminder that there are people behind all these numbers we hear. We hear death toll of 46,000, whatever it is now. We know that that's an underestimate anyway. But each of those people who are dead, had a life ahead of them, had a life they were living, and even the people who are alive have had their lives disrupted so much that they're unlikely to be the same again.
Well, one thing that sits with me from the solidarity rallies here in Dunedin, and this was relatively early on that I heard this, as one of the Palestinian speakers here mentioned that 30 of her family members had been killed. And that just hung in the air, as I'm sure everybody that heard that imagined 30 of their extended family just being gone in the space of a couple of weeks. And as I said, that was towards the start of this. It has been, a year and a half? That it has been unrelenting since. And Europe's focused on what's happening on Ukraine because of what America has done and has really given them an existential fright of, oh shit, America hasn't got our back anymore. With Trump in power, there is not going to be any wringing of hands or even the pretense of, hey, Israel, maybe you need to tone it down that we got from the Biden administration. It is full on from Trump. Well, the Jews support me, so yeah, go hard. We don't care. Nobody's coming for the Palestinians. Nobody's got their back or the ability to stop this, as far as I can see.
And of course, Trump has talked about, ethnically cleansing Gaza without using the term. He's talked about getting everyone to leave and that the US will take ownership of it and rebuild it. And this is, a lot of this is just as ridiculous as talk of annexing Canada and Greenland. It's not really going to happen, but it does give, Netanyahu, the government in Israel, a sign that, Trump is not going to stop them. America's not going to stop them. And, for all their faults, the Biden administration was at least being critical while still providing them with enormous amounts of weaponry, but sometimes being critical. And with Trump, we don't even have that. We have the weaponry and we have the complete uncritical words towards Israel.
And people in the chat are saying, obviously, it is accurate, but just to mention it as well, when I said the war crime, but withholding the food, there's also all the other war crimes, the bombing of civilians and all the other stuff as well. It's just so often we hear these things like, well, they're withholding food, and people kind of go, oh, it's just another thing in war. It's not. It's the one, those are the kinds of things people don't think about as war crimes. It's easy to connect bombing civilians, but also withholding food and stuff, harder to connect. Let's get to a couple of these chats and then we'll say goodnight, Byron. Thanks for hanging around, man. It's been fun.
No problem.
Well, this hasn't been fun. This conversation hasn't been a fun conversation, but it's been great to have you here, to have it. Kiwi Bird, can we sanction Israel already? Also ban the IDF. Wooming says, Israel breaking the ceasefire. Colour me shocked. Yep. Tiffany says, funny how Duterte got sent to The Hague, but yet somehow Netanyahu and Putin walk free. I'll just say one of those things is not like the other. Says the short one, the cult are the ones believing this is okay. Not entirely sure whether that's this conversation or the last one. Kaimatada. Give a colonizer an inch and they'll take a country. That's very good. That sounds like should be a t-shirt if you're asking me. And another one from Says the Short One, it just says everyone should watch No Other Land. I don't know that, Chewie. Do you know it? Is that why you started?
Yeah, so it won an Oscar.
Okay.
And one of the strangest things from this year's Oscar is that it really split the room as far as people acknowledging that win. Some people very happy to applaud it, and some people very consciously not applauding it.
Right.
I think it won best foreign film.
Okay, cool. Yeah, all right, we'll do that. And finally, Michael says, you guys know Karen Plunkett is heading to Israel. God, good grief. Good grief. And the cycle is complete. Is that what they say? The cycle is complete. Hey, Byron, thanks for jumping in tonight. Thanks for hanging around. Gosh, we had you for an hour, bro. I hope that was all right with you. And thanks for sharing your thoughts around that other two topics. And we'll stay in touch. I do actually want to talk to you about your connections in Gaza because I've been wanting to do something there with someone. So I'll send you a text or give you a call or write you a message in the next few days. And thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, dude.
Cheers,
all the
mate.
best. All right. I've seen I did some of the super chats. I saw some of the super chats in there now, too. And I've just noticed, why am I St. Pat? When did that happen, by the way?
Quite a while ago, Pat, that happened.
Tiffany says 700 capitalists be like, freeze, pleb. I actually just had a look on Briscoe's while we were doing it. It's 800 actually. They're $7.99. And no, and we're not going to do anything like that. It's utterly ridiculous. For the coal fund, $2. And this is EHUK. It's very generous, but I was actually being serious about it. But thank you very much. It's a very generous offering.
I would say personally that could be a donation to some sort of Palestinian organization for blankets.
Sure. There you go. We'll do that. Anyone tonight, and I'll go back and have a look because I can, who has put in any kind of money towards a blanket fund, will get it off to a Palestinian, whatchamacallit, tonight. In fact, we might even match it and send it off. I'll tell you about that tomorrow night. Ryjan, there's another $2 for that, what we're going to do. Kooky says blanket. All right, there's another one. Fair enough. So, okay, we'll do that, right? So if anyone wants to give to the blanket fund, it'll all go plus some to a charity we find to do with blanket, whether it's the guys we've done stuff before, which were the medical people, but Chewie's link to a blanket or something, we'll do that. Definitely.
Actually, I know Byron's still in the green room there, mate. If you've got any suggestions for good Palestinian org we could donate to, if you could. Oh, he's back. Any ideas of a good Palestinian org?
Not off the top of my head, but I mean, there's bound to be one looking at getting supplies to people there.
Cool. If you see anything, fire us through a message. If you don't, we'll do some research.
Great.
Bye again. No gammons. It would be good to see guests who can offer overseas left views. UK ones, a different bias. Maximilian Robespierre. That's Pierre, isn't it? So it'd be Robespierre, maybe. No Justice, Super Tangsky. Give me all the words to say. I should have made you do this one, Chewie. Renegade Light. I do often connect with overseas people, just so you know. I mean, the last one I tried to get probably, and I will try again, is Gary's Economics. I do not just because they're overseas doesn't mean. And look, there is a shit ton of donations coming in for Palestine. We'll go through all of those at the very end. Okay, because there's now
holy shit!
Yes,
yes,
absolutely.
Okay, someone
library
let the
that
taps
went well for the Library of Alexandria. How thoroughly unsurprising it's Christians doing it again, and the rest of them are all. There's a lot in there. There you go. For example, legendary. I'm much more comfortable that now is going elsewhere.
Wow.
Thank you, Ian. It's very generous. And what we'll do in the next couple of days, when I find where this is going to go to, we will. I'll bring the receipts to the show to show you guys where it's actually gone. Okay. Is it time?
It's time. It's beanie time.
Speaking of capitalism. So you guys know we've been working on the shop, and we've been, trying to grow some of that side of the podcast so we can continue to grow, etc. We've heard what you guys have said. People are asking for beanies and caps and various things. This has literally not been opened, so this is not some kind of weird setup. I haven't seen these yet, so we're going to do it now. So these are the whatever you call the trials, the samples. Good grief.
Well, it's well wrapped.
Why don't you do some of those while I'm looking through it, Chewie?
That's a good idea, Pat. Okay, so we have $5 from Peter. We have $20 from Citizen Gold. We have another 20 from Vanda Amor. Blanky from Gaza for Tiffany. More for the blanket fund from Kiwi Skirt. Max says the short one. More money in the blanket fund. Blankies for Palestinians from Kaimatara. Belfast Child, $10 for the blanket fund. Wooming, $8.99 for the blanket fund. Lucid Box. That's just a chat. But it is money in the pot.
What do you think? What are you thinking, Chewie? As he's reading your things out.
Oh yes, excellent. Gray, $8.99 for the blanket fund. 15 from Ruru. Jen has ADHD. $2 for the blanket fund. Noah, blanket fund. Also for recommendations of the ladies I've had at podcast would be good to chat to. Cool. So we had the blue and we had the orange. They're good. They look good. Are they warm? Is your head warm?
Yeah, I'm sweating already. Just like that. I can't hear you once I take those headphones off, obviously. I'm going to save that one. Oh, gosh, we've got 5. Oh, here we go. Oh.
Is this just a BHN one? Or what do we got?
This is the one, I think, eh?
Where's the logo at? Oh, there we go.
Old school. Old school. How about that? Old school?
I've got the space here. That would be great for it.
Old school?
Nice. It's winter. Winter is coming, people. Nice.
That one? Not bad. And you know I saved the best till last, did you?
Yeah, boy. Look at how orange that is.
that is orange on orange.
Violent orange.
I think they look all right. I'm gonna have to. I'll give them a play for a bit, because if it's just okay, it does look like it's a print. Like if I play with it and twist it and see if I can rip it, and yeah, they look pretty good though. They look pretty good. Well, I guess what we're saying, let's remember as well, Fano, if you're just joining us, we've got some mini versions of these for t-shirts and stuff. Well, look at all these generous people for Palestinian donations. These little miniature ones. We're going to do some little kids stuff, but if you want to do a little kids t-shirt, a couple of people have already messaged me saying their 3-year-olds would like some. Then bigheronews@gmail.com. We're going to do some little people t-shirts as well. All right. This is going bananas and crazy, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars have come in. You guys are amazing. I don't know where you're up to, Chewie. You've been deleting as you've been going?
I haven't been deleting. I've been leaving them there just for your records.
I mean, I can have a look in the back end. I'll just do anything that's come through tonight. I'll just do it. So, because I mean, 95% of what's come through is going to be this anyway. So whatever gets donated tonight in the super chat, in about 3 days, I'll be able to see that in the back of YouTube, and I'll just make that as a donation, including whatever was given at the start that wasn't specifically for it. All right, team. You should try and remember where you're up to so we can actually do some more at the end. Let's get to the last story of the night. David Seymour made an announcement today. It's kind of gone a little bit to the back of the news cycle because I think of the Gaza late breaking news. But a new initiative from ACT Party to get into local politics.
We're here to talk about ACT's campaign, ACT Local, to start running candidates and local communities up and down this country under an ACT banner. The reason for doing this is I've been a Member of Parliament for 10 years. Many times people have come to me with problems in their community where, if I was honest, I'd say that's actually up to your council. The answer is to elect better councillors. Now, I don't usually say that because people want their problems solved by the person in front of them. However, I feel it would be better if when people go to vote for their councillors, they have common sense people in their community standing under a set of values that they can identify and hold them accountable for.
So that's the announcement that's been made. The second part of the announcement was they got asked what does ACT Local believe in? So what are the principles and values going to be of ACT Local?
We believe if people have the option of voting for local candidates in their community who've signed up to a set of values for which ACT is well known, reducing waste and getting lower rates, stopping trying to get people out of their cars, stopping the constant interruption in people's transport.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
But just quietly, do you not think that this image is possibly going to come back to haunt him? I mean, what Photoshop could do, Fano, just saying, what Photoshop could do with how he's holding his arm and stuff. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud what Photoshop could do and then get sent to bigherodnews@gmail.com.
Only we knew people that were good at Photoshop.
Yeah, if only we knew
don't
one.
know.
If only we knew one.
Sport that drives people mad, and finally getting rid of the racial discrimination that has crept into council politics. I think that's something that people would love to vote for.
That's the correct response there, Chewie. So we'll chat after this one. There's a couple more clips, but this is an interesting part, and I've written down some notes for this one, how things are going to work, right? How things will work in it. So he says something in this conversation, and he says this words, on things like race. He goes like division on things like race. And I'm begging you journalists to start to think about questioning David Seymour when he brings up race. Because my question would be, Mr. Seymour, you said division and you gave an example of things like race. What are some of the other things? So like race and like what else? Because if there's nothing else, as we've been saying for 2 or 3 years now, he's only talking about division based on race. Because when he says like race, he's saying, well, that's an example of division amongst all the others like race. What are the other ones? That's what I want to know, Mr. Seymour, the other ones that you think are so important.
It's important that we keep working on our campaigning machinery. ACT is growing enormously. We've been running bigger and bigger campaigns, and from an ACT Party point of view, this is an opportunity to show more New Zealanders the values that we stand by: less government waste, more freedom to choose on things like transport, and less discrimination based on things like race.
Yeah, less discrimination based on things like race. Less discrimination based on what other things, Mr. Seymour? Because you're saying it like it's one of a series of things, but I would challenge you that you have nothing else to back it up because all you ever talk about is race. That's why people think you're race baiting.
Values that we stand by: less government waste, more freedom to choose on things like transport, and less discrimination based on things like race. And also, frankly, from the party's point of view, is an opportunity to work on our campaigning capacity, which is important over going into 26.
Chewie, I do have 2 other clips, but your first thoughts around ACT Local. What are you thinking?
I think for all of you out there, chat, wherever you are in the country, you can already think of a city councillor or a regional councillor that will absolutely jump at this. That they already align with ACT's, I guess, vibe. that they don't want to pay rates and they don't want to fund nice things, and the council should just devolve into running car parks and rubbish collection, and that's about it. I think the only saving grace here is that David has been very clear that there will be no resources given to them. There'll be no funding or campaigning or anything like that, that these people will be up to their fundraising themselves. Whether there is some shifty fundraising or just nudge, wink, wink, here's a candidate that you can funnel money to, that remains to be seen. I think ACT have finally noticed something that the Cookers noticed last local body election time, and that is that it is easier to get candidates affecting local change in councils because people don't vote for it. People don't turn out for these sort of things. And overwhelmingly, things like ratepayers groups and don't put up the rates and all of that sort of thing seems to be a way to end up in council. It is a vote winner. I mean, here in Dunedin, I already saw an affiliated group of councillors that are running for office drop that word of like minimising rates increases. And I called it out then, and I will call it out wherever I see it. Anybody that is talking about trying to lower rates in the wake of Three Waters going away and in the wake of climate change has got their head up their own ass. And those are the people that ACT is going to want to talk to because they've traditionally found their base with people that have their head up their own ass.
So, Chewie, as you always do, if you don't believe in spiritual, is the next piece perfectly without knowing what's coming up. The title to this next piece is ACT Local is something that will appeal to the people who vote in local body politics. This will be something that will be dangerous to our worldview if we're interested in having our worldview represented in local body politics, because this is the kind of thing that Chewie's just mentioned, the ratepayers group, they are ACT's audience now. So this idea will be attractive to those people. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a fairly heavy presence, maybe not this year, but at the next local body election, of ACT nominees, because this is exactly the kind of thing that the people who vote, who are typically older, typically white, and typically complain more about their rates, are already ACT voters.
Far too many things for far too many people and discover they can't pay the bills, while in reality they have leaky pipes, clogged roads, not enough parking, too many vanity projects that aren't actually making the proverbial boat go faster. That is a core ACT value. Get the government focused on the things where it can make a difference for ratepayers or taxpayers' money. Then there's this question of transport. For far too long we've been trying to change the way that people get around instead of facilitating them to live the lives as they would like to. We're not into social engineering. If a cycleway can actually be occupied and useful, then we're all over it. But who's seen one of those?
So just think about that again, and thinking about the local body curmudgeons. I obviously would disagree with everything he's saying, because what he's doing is he's putting value in things that he sees value in. He's not putting value in cycle lanes. If they can't be put in the ledger as a profit-making opportunity, he doesn't value them. At least that's what he pretends, if it's something. But this is the language that those ratepayer groups like and respond to, and will like this idea. Chewie?
So here's my little pushback on his anti-cycle lane bullshit. And I'm going to paraphrase one of Dunedin's local councillors and his excellent pushback on the same line when it happened here in Dunedin. Is people point to a cycle lane with nobody in it at a particular time of day and go, see, look, nobody's using it. Nobody does the same thing for a road.
Yeah, true.
You go out and take a picture of a road with no cars on it and go, see, we don't need this.
Yeah, very fair.
And then the flip side of it is if you see, let's say 15 cars on a street, that's got quite a bit of visual impact, doesn't it? What about 15 bikes in the same space? Doesn't have the same visual impact. And you can't build something and then see it full to capacity straight away. Here in Dunedin, people quite often say, who would ride a bike to work in Dunedin in shitty weather? This morning was abysmal. And I saw people with cargo bikes, taking kids to school, on their way to work, all of that. People are using these facilities. But it's always like, it's a waste of money. The transition period is not allowed to happen. And when David's saying, why can't we help people move around in the way that they want to, does that not include cyclists? Does that not include people that want to use public transport? Because those people, believe it or not, David, are ratepayers, are taxpayers, and deserve infrastructure for them as well.
The other thing is, of course, this idea, as you've just brought up, and he talks about in the way that they want to. We don't have any kind of system, central government, local body, where we rule by referendum or rule by mob rule. Because if we did, then, okay, so let's let them live the way they want to live. That's his line. So what if they don't want to pay rates no more, David? What if they don't want that? What if that's the way they want to live? Of course, you're not going to accept that. It's also a very wealthy way of thinking about things, to have the money to make the choices to live the way you want to live. Like, some people aren't afforded that same privilege because they can't afford to live the way they want to live. And this is what he's doing right now. And he's putting out there a privileged position of people with money, and it's not, he's not being truthful. Maybe not that he's actively lying, but that he'll only support what people want to a certain point, because then if what people want doesn't work for the ACT narrative, then we're not going to do it. So, but this is the language, Chewie, that those ratepayers groups like, which is why I say voters, the typical voter in local body election, I think they'll be all over this. Let's get to the end of this, and then there's one more clip.
We're not into social engineering. If a cycleway can actually be occupied and useful, then we're all over it. But who's seen one of those? And finally, there's endless racial discrimination in councils, and we just have a simple vision of a country where each person is valued for their common humanity. We champion that at central government level. We intend to champion it at local government level.
So I feel like we've really covered all of that off, Chewie. Maybe we'll just go straight into this last bit. Unless there's anything else you particularly want to add.
I just want to say one thing, and I can only speak for here in Dunedin, but I am going to be an absolute menace to candidates and others at any ratepayers group meeting that I can get to. I urge other people to do that in their own areas. Go to those ratepayers group and argue with them.
So I believe Mr. Seymour has standing in claiming that various historical figures probably would have voted for ACT. He does it again today. Let's have a look.
It's a good question. Well, look, never say never. But I just make the point that we're looking for people to stand in councils. If Jesus comes back and says, I want to stand for Auckland, for Mayor of Wellington, we might say, buddy, with that hair and beard, how could we not endorse you? By the way, the ACT Party is not actually going to bring back Jesus. That was clearly a joke, just in case anyone starts to get worried about it, all right? Thank you very much for all your time. Do I reckon Jesus would support it?
Jesus! I don't like that laugh.
You know what? I believe that Jesus very well might support ACT. From what I know about him, he believed that Jesus believed that each person had inherent dignity, was made in the image of God, Imago Dei, and deserved to be treated with universal human rights. In many respects, the underlying teachers of Jesus and the ACT Party overlap, But I just want to be clear, the ACT Party is not promising to disinter Guy Fawkes, Jesus or any historical figure to stand for mayor, council or any other position. Thank you very much.
There you go, Chewie. So Jesus would vote for ACT. He is.
We're talking about the same Palestinian socialist.
Yeah, that's the first thing, Palestinian, right? So I don't know how that fits with ACT and ACT supporters, but the guy who was more concerned about the widows and orphans and basically pushed back against society and the powerful, that woke guy.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but he was also pretty good at feeding people, apparently. Could cater to large groups of people.
He could cater
with
to large groups of people.
100% delivery rate, on time,
yep.
Perfect temperature.
And somehow he spread just a couple of loaves and fishes through thousands of people at the same time. So what a return on investment, Chewie.
What an
very good
unhinged thing to say. Like, okay, I can understand why the reporter there asked that question, because it plays into other things that he said about various historical figures that he reckons would, for some reason, vote for ACT. It's a dumb line of questioning. I can understand why they did it, though. My challenge to reporters, because I know you watch the show, is next time David Seymour does something stupid like this, what I want you to do is go, what the fuck are you on about? Just don't indulge him. This is nonsense. This reeks to me of a dead cat.
Yeah.
This is him going out there and saying just something egregious. The ACT and local government thing, who the fuck cares? But the only thing you see David Seymour in the news for weeks now is his utter incompetence at feeding school children. And maybe he's just really tired of that news cycle. So it's time, because he called this press conference. This isn't just like a stand-up and he's made a comment. He has summoned reporters to his location, gone and stolen a cone from somewhere, and come out with a bunch of nonsense to get something else going in the news cycle. And in a way, we're falling for it because we're talking about his ridiculous comments about Jesus. Is this him just trying to throw us away from talking about another week of poor stories about feeding school children, which he is somehow utterly incapable of doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm listening to you, but all I can still think is I wonder what could be photoshopped into this image. That's really the only thing going through my brain.
You wonder, do you?
I do.
You wonder. You wonder if that can be photoshopperied into a massive dildo.
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Is that plausible deniability there?
I'm just wondering.
Don't do it, people. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Really interesting points, though. And on some level, if we can take a step back and now not think about the worst human being on the face of the planet for a second, but think about just the political game, if that's what they're doing to take attention away from, I mean, probably a couple of weeks ago it was Tim Yago, take attention away from that, and now it's we're hearing in the weekend him talk about he's doing his job to the best of his ability, which is horseshit, his ability, and then he's doing this kind of thing.
Well, that's another great question.
Yeah.
He drops out, I believe that Jesus would vote for ACT. Oh, okay, follow-up question, David. Do you think Jesus would shelter a pedophile? Do you think he'd be up for that? Because that's what you did.
Jesus never fed melted plastic to kids. No, he did not. All right, that's us, Chewie. Is there anything that, because look, to be fair, we've had too many super chats to put them all up. I think, did I see you right in the chat? It was up around $400 now.
Last I
Ish.
checked, it was just under 400. So I'd say with some of the other ones that came in since I did that, we are over 400. Pat will tally it up and we will tell you guys how much it is and what we're donating to. But that's my very, very much back of the cocktail napkin sums on what we've done. Thank you so much, guys. Like for such just we've transitioned from Pat having a moan about how his bed's too cold because he's a soft northerner, to actually doing something really good off the cuff, and I'm blown away by this community just really throwing in for it. You guys are great. No other words for it. Just really, really great.
Oh, Chewie, you got all kind of squidgy there for a second.
Yeah, that happens. I'm like I don't know. It's one of those things that's got a crunchy exterior. It's all soft and gooey on the inside.
Like a baby.
What is it called? A turtle.
A turtle.
I'm a turtle.
Look, there's just heaps of people. Robert Chewie, Arvids, Chris Mincher, Tiffany again, Exeldair, Rajan, Arvids again, the technician, Exeldair, Arvids, Kiwi Wolf with a 20. Who else we got in there? Tiffany. Maybe we'll just do this. Maybe because not to exclude everybody, but maybe we'll just go through and say just thanks to some of the people who have given sort of double digits. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Bill. I think you've done this one, haven't you? Thank you, Synex Era. But why wouldn't you do that again? Gosh, there's so many. There's actually too many. Thank you, Ruru. Thank you, Belfast. Thank you, Says the Short One. Thank you, Kiwi Skirt. Thank you, Vanda. Thank you, Gold. And this is literally does not negate anybody who's made smaller amounts. We just can't do them all. Oh my gosh. And to wrap up with, thank you, Jeremy. It's very, 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 very generous. It's because, and to be frank, and we know this from our Patreon, it's actually the little ones that make the big amount. That's actually how you get to a big place with few of these bigger ones thrown in. But so thank you to everybody genuinely, and thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. That's very generous. We will figure out how that's going to go. Now, just so you know, YouTube has a back end which says the revenue that gets earned on each screen, but sometimes it takes a couple of days to come through. So I may have it for you by Thursday, but if not, we'll do it over the weekend. Follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky, and we'll get it out to you. We'll get it out to you, and then we'll tell you on Monday if it does take that long to come through.
Well, Pat, before we roll credits, please let me play my TikTok.
Okay.
Please make me play.
Can I just ask you one question? This is not going to get us booted or banned like other stuff over the last few weeks, as it's not owned by anyone.
I should imagine so.
Okay.
Who knows? Let's find out.
Okay.
So we need to remove that one.
You just added me.
Let me remove it.
I took it off. You added me.
There we go. This is hilarious.
Fuck off! What's that? That's fucking raw, and that's fucking
I'm just
white.
saying to you.
Well, I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you a question. What is it?
Parents, we don't want to, frankly, if you don't like the food, ultimately, you can make a Marmite sandwich.
Well, don't start getting fucking smarmy with me when we're standing there in the shit, you dirty pig!
Sorry?
Fuck off!
That's very funny. Gosh, I hope that gets sent over to what's his name?
Isn't that amazing?
Ramsey.
You see why I had to interrupt? I had to get it up there.
You had to interrupt. And now we're just going to say huge thanks to people. And we'll see you tomorrow night from 9:00.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the
All right, guys, that's it for us. We'll be back tomorrow night for another edition of Big Hairy News for your Wednesday. Be safe, be swell, and we'll catch you then. Hooroo.
Cheers, man.